Countering with determination, Zhao Hao retorted vigorously, "Brother Xiu didn't coerce you into joining us, did he? Weren't you eager to follow? It was you who sought directions from us initially, but now you're faulting Brother Xiu for the chosen path. If you're capable, why didn't you take the lead yourself?" Enraged by Zhao Hao's remarks, Wu Dehai retorted, "We may lack certain skills, but at least we don't act recklessly like him. When we're unsure of the path, we discuss it collectively. We all placed our trust in him and allowed him to decide. Yet, who would have thought he'd choose blindly? He's betrayed our trust and led us into a dead end." Wu Dehai's impassioned response struck Zhao Hao with such force that it left him momentarily speechless. Wang Xiao positioned himself between Zhao Hao and Wu Dehai, urging them to cease their argument. With a solemn tone, he emphasized, "Our immediate concern must be devising a strategy for survival." Casting a cautious glance around the room, he shared his observations. "From what I've seen, this apparition only targets one individual at a time. After each attack, there's a brief window of safety lasting 2 to 3 minutes. Our only option is to designate a distraction, allowing the rest of us to flee to safety." As Wang Xiao's words settled in, a sinister grin crept across Fang Xiu's face. Unable to contain himself, he burst into laughter, his amusement at the grim situation palpable. With a resolute stride, Wang Xiao moved purposefully toward Wang Xiu, his gaze unwavering. It was evident that he had made a decision, and Wang Xiu seemed to understand his unspoken intent. In addition to his determined approach, Wang Xiao raised his voice, resonating with authority as he exclaimed, "It's Fang Xiu who led us into this dire predicament. It's time for him to make amends. Join me, lend your aid." As Wang Xiao's words hung in the air, a heavy silence settled over the group. Their eyes met in a shared expression of dismay and uncertainty. While the instinct for self-preservation burned within them, the thought of sacrificing another human being to ensure their own survival filled them with profound discomfort. "Release Brother Xiu." Zhao Hao's voice reverberated through the tense atmosphere, filled with raw emotion and defiance. With a fierce roar, he propelled himself forward, charging towards Wang Xiao with determination etched into every line of his face. Startled by Zhao Hao's sudden charge, Wang Xiao's shock was evident in his wide-eyed expression. Reacting swiftly, he called out to Wu Dehai, his voice tinged with urgency and desperation. "Wu Dehai, come quickly and assist me." Upon receiving Wang Xiao's call for assistance, Wu Dehai sprang into action without hesitation. Wu Dehai, with determination etched on his face, swiftly lunged at Zhao Hao, using his robust frame to forcefully knock him to the ground. As Zhao Hao lay beneath him, Wu Dehai directed his attention to Wang, his voice steady despite the commotion around them. "I've got him under control," he assured Wang, his weight pressing down on Zhao Hao to keep him restrained. Meanwhile, Zhao Hao's shouts reverberated through the room, pleading to be released. A sudden hush fell over the group as they registered the unmistakable sound of the door closing. Outside the door, Fang Xiu stood alone, peering inside. He could discern the varied expressions of his companions. As Fang Xiu observed the scene within, a voice from within the group erupted in alarm, demanding to know who had closed the door. Inside the room, the girl trembled in terror, her hands instinctively flying to cover her face as she let out a panicked cry. "I didn't do anything," she exclaimed, her voice quivering with fear. "I can't see anything." Meanwhile, Zhao Hao lay sprawled on the ground, his voice hoarse with desperation as he continued to shout Fang Xiu's name. As Wang Xiao's gaze fixed upon the closed door, his heart pounded with trepidation. Through the small window, he discerned a faint silhouette. With a tremor in his voice, Wang Xiao voiced the question that weighed heavily on everyone's minds. "Is that human or ghost?" Beyond the threshold, Fang Xiu's voice echoed, bearing a haunting blend of acceptance and amusement. "I never imagined humans could captivate me again," he mused, irony dripping from his words. "Yet, they prove more intriguing than ghosts on occasion." He chuckled, his tone tinged with irony. "Thank you for reigniting my interest in this world. Rest assured, I'll repay you handsomely next time." But his laughter dissolved into silence as a chilling noise shattered the air. In a swift, lethal motion, the doctor's blade sliced through, severing Fang Xiu's life with a single stroke. As Fang Xiu lay motionless amidst a pool of blood, Wang Xiao forcefully swung open the door, bolting out alongside Wu Dehai. Meanwhile, Zhao Hao rushed towards his fallen friend Xiu. Tears welled in Zhao Hao's eyes as he cried out Fang Xiu's name, his voice echoing with anguish and desperation. As Wang Xiao fled, a smug smirk played across his lips, and he couldn't resist glancing back at Fang Xiu's lifeless form with a twisted satisfaction. Suddenly, his expression froze in shock as he was nailed in his tracks, his features contorted with surprise and disbelief. Even in death, Fang Xiu's face retained a serene smile, his gaze fixed upon Wang Xiao with unwavering calmness and peace. Wang Xiao's heart seemed to skip a beat as he heard the voice of the deceased Xiu, a chill running down his spine. "Just wait for me," Xiu's words echoed hauntingly in his ears, sending shivers through his entire being. Abruptly, a cold, clammy sensation radiated from Fang Xiu's palm, while unexpected sight of slender, pale thighs emerging into view. Fang Xiu's realization dawned upon him like a thunderbolt. He had returned to the last checkpoint, that precise moment when he and Zhao Hao had touched the ghost's thigh. Fang Xiu, freshly returned from death, found himself mirroring his previous actions without deviation. It was as though he was replaying the scene like a repetitive episode of a television drama. Touching the thigh, running, descending the stairs, Fang Xiu followed the same sequence of actions as before. Soon after, the air filled with the sound of approaching footsteps, followed by Wang Xiao's scream, "Ghost! Ghost is catching up!" Just as previously, Fang Xiu leaped down from the stairs to the next floor, successfully reuniting with Wang Xiao and the others. Zhao Hao glanced at the crowd with surprise, questioning why they were moving so slowly. Angrily, one of them shot back, stating they had been running at their maximum speed and had already descended at least 20 floors. The conversation resumed as before, while Fang Xiu ignored them and continued his descent without interruption. Suddenly, the sound of a door opening echoed through the corridor, leaving everyone astonished that Fang Xiu had located the exit so swiftly. "What are you waiting for?" Zhao Hao urged, prompting them to hurry towards the exit. In no time, the group found themselves standing before two hallways. Wang Xiao asserted that since Fang Xiu had discovered the door just moments ago, he must know which path to take. He implored Fang Xiu to assist them in their escape, promising that everyone would repay him for his help. Fang Xiu didn't respond immediately but instead took out his mobile phone, checking the time. "There's still 1 minute, he remarked, "and the ghost will appear after 1 minute. Wang Xiao's excitement was evident as he exclaimed, "You actually know when the ghosts will appear? It seems you've truly become a spirit master, brother Xiu. As long as you can get me out of this ghost domain, I'll give you 5 million. However, Fang Xiu shook his head calmly at that moment. With a sinister smile, he glanced back at Wang Xiao and said, "No rush. Before we leave, I have one more thing to attend to." As Wang Xiao attempted to inquire about Fang Xiu's intentions, he was abruptly interrupted by a decisive kick to the groin. The force of the impact caused him to spew blood from his mouth, and an agonizing scream pierced through the crowd. Writhing in pain on the ground, Wang Xiao was met with Fang Xiu's sarcastic retort, suggesting that he could use the 5 million to tend to his injured eggs. Shaking in agony, Wang Xiao questioned Xiu about why he had kicked him. "Is it because the money is insufficient?" Wang Xiao inquired, his voice strained with pain. "If you believe the payment is inadequate, please inform me." Wu Dehai reacted swiftly, his voice laced with anger as he addressed Fang Xiu. "Fang Xiu, what's the meaning of this? Why did you kick him out of the blue?" Another colleague also joined in, echoing the questioning of Fang Xiu's actions. Upon hearing their words, Fang Xiu offered an explanation for his actions. He stated that the speed of the ghosts far exceeds that of humans, implying that when the time limit expired, someone would inevitably perish. By incapacitating Wang Xiao, who had lost his ability to move, Fang Xiu believed he had effectively saved them from the fate of death. While skepticism lingered among the others regarding Fang Xiu's reasoning, Zhao Hao voiced his agreement with Fang Xiu's explanation. After Fang Xiu finished speaking, he made another sudden move, catching everyone off guard. In the next moment, another piercing scream echoed through the air. This time, it was Wu Dehai who collapsed to the ground. Wu Dehai's posture mirrored that of Wang Xiao's as he tumbled to the ground, clutching his groin and emitting agonized howls. The screams seemed never-ending, but it became evident that Wu Dehai's endurance paled in comparison to Wang Xiao's. After just 2 screams, he succumbed to unconsciousness. This time, the eruption of the group was palpable, as Fang Xiu's unexpected attacks had resulted in serious injuries to both Wang Xiao and Wu Dehai. Zhao Hao stuttered, subconsciously taking a few steps back from Fang Xiu, his hands instinctively moving to protect his own groin. "What on earth are you doing?" exclaimed the other colleague, his voice brimming with disbelief and concern. 2 sudden attacks for no reason, causing serious injuries to 2 people. "Are you insane?" He continued to argue, stating that the reason for attacking Mr. Wang was to save them, but what about attacking Manager Wu? Facing the question, Fang Xiu's expression remained unchanged as he calmly stated, I am keeping him as a spare. Zhao Hao offered a thumbs up, affirming, just as expected, Brother Xiao, always thorough. As everyone gazed upon Fang Xiu's composed countenance, a storm brewed within their hearts. Fang Xiu's actions were undeniably stark and ruthless, catching them off guard and leaving them deeply shaken. While it might be understandable to harm one person to safeguard another, Fang Xiu's decision to keep a spare was unprecedented and unsettling. Fang Xiu emphasized the urgency of the situation, pointing out that time was limited. He further clarified that the right side led to a dead end, while survival lay in choosing the left path. One person exclaimed, questioning Fang Xiu's decision, if the way to survive is on the left, why don't you go first? Is there danger in the corridor ahead, and are you using us as backup? Calmly, Fang Xiu responded, I am waiting to touch a thigh. He then added, you also have 10 seconds left to escape. The other two individuals present found themselves questioning their own ears, unable to fully comprehend Fang Xiu's statement, except for Zhao Hao. With excitement, he exclaimed, eagerly requesting to join Xiu in another thigh-touching session. At that moment, the sound of joint rotations filled the air as the female doctor descended from the ceiling, her limbs emitting crackling sounds as she crawled towards them. Filled with panic, the two screamed and attempted to flee, their heads whipping around in terror. However, their fear of Fang Xiu's possible deceit caused them to hesitate momentarily. Eventually, they darted into the corridor on the left, but their trepidation prevented them from venturing too far into its depths. On the contrary, Fang Xiu didn't flee. Instead, he advanced towards the female doctor. However, he halted his approach not far from Wang Xiao. Upon witnessing Fang Xiu's approach, Wang Xiao's eyes brimmed with a mixture of hatred and anger. He extended his hand, as if desperately yearning to seize Fang Xiu's trousers, as if to drag him down with him. Fang Xiu stepped forward and firmly planted his foot on Wang Xiao's palm, eliciting a sharp cry of pain from him. The intense agony drove Wang Xiao to the brink of madness. At that moment, Fang Xiu slowly crouched down in front of him, the shadow descending to conceal his face. He informed Wang Xiao that he wouldn't leave. Instead, he would remain to witness the ghost devour him. Meanwhile, the ghost was upon him, seizing his head with its hands. This time, instead of using a knife, it gruesomely tore his head off with its bare hands. Is this the taste of revenge? It's truly intoxicating. Fang Xiu's body trembled involuntarily. It was his first experience savoring the fruit of revenge, and he couldn't contain his excitement. As Wang Xiao's blood sprayed across his face, each warm droplet served as a visceral reminder of the justice being served, fueling the fire of vengeance burning within him. The rhythmic thud of his own heart echoed in his ears, a steady beat of triumph against the backdrop of chaos. In that moment, he couldn't help but imagine the satisfaction of one day witnessing his wife's demise at his own hands. Soon, Fang Xiu crouched near the female doctor and began to touch her thigh. The few people not far away were completely stunned. Even though they saw it with their own eyes, they still couldn't believe it. It turned out that what Fang Xiu said about touching thighs was really about touching the ghost's thigh. At that moment, Fang Xiu turned around and glanced at Zhao Hao. Recalling what Zhao Hao had done in the utility room earlier, Fang Xiu, although devoid of any sentimentality, still felt a desire to assist Zhao Hao further. Fang Xiu extended his hand, inviting Zhao Hao to join him. Zhao Hao hesitated, facing Fang Xiu's invitation. Fang Xiu's current appearance was too frightening to ignore. Fang Xiu's calm face was now smeared with blood, creating a stark contrast against his pale skin. The juxtaposition of white skin and bright red blood lent him an eerie, almost haunting beauty. At his feet lay the severed limbs of Wang Xiao, mingling with the ghost's presence, creating a macabre scene that made it difficult to distinguish between the two. Zhao Hao hesitated for a moment, grappling with his decision before finally breaking the silence. He confessed that he had very few friends, and Fang Xiu was the only genuine friend he had. Coming from a modest background with unremarkable looks, Zhao Hao had always felt like an outsider in the sales office. It was only Fang Xiu, also an orphan, who had shown him kindness and accepted him. Over time, their bond grew stronger, and they became good friends despite their differences. Slowly, Zhao Hao made his way to Fang Xiu's side, overcoming his reservations. And the two of them touched the ghost's thighs together. Zhao Hao hesitated before asking, "Why did you suddenly attack Wang Xiao and Wu Dehai?" Fang Xiu elaborated on the ghost's extraordinary speed, suggesting that survival necessitated trading human lives for time. Given the status of Wang Xiao and Wu Dehai, in a situation where a choice had to be made, whom would you choose? Is it Fang Xiu, with his conflicts with Wang and Wu Dehai? Or is it Zhao Hao, who has always been disliked? Or perhaps he considered one of them? Zhao Hao's complexion turned slightly pale, preparing to respond when Fang Xiu interjected, "Do you sense a chilling sensation creeping into your body?" Zhao Hao was momentarily startled, then shook his head. Fang Xiu's heart skipped a beat as he sensed it attentively. It wasn't an illusion. A peculiar chill indeed emanated from the female doctor's thigh into his palm, coursing through his body as it spread from his hand. Fang Xiu pondered whether this sensation was an indication of some strange force taking hold. He questioned why he hadn't felt anything when he touched the ghost's thigh before. Then it dawned on him that perhaps there had been a faint sensation earlier, but it was too subtle to notice. Now, it seemed to be nearing a critical point, causing the feeling to intensify suddenly. Could this be considered a prelude to spiritual awakening? After hearing Fang Xiu's statement, Zhao Hao became extremely excited, touching the ghost's thigh in various places while questioning, "Cool air invading the body? What does this cold air signify? Why can't I sense it? Could it be due to my posture?" After a moment, Zhao Hao suggested they should leave because the ghost was nearing the end of its meal. Fang Xiu comforted him, urging not to fret, and pointed out that Wu Dehai was still present. He also mentioned a growing sense of readiness to ignite his spirituality. Zhao Hao was instantly filled with delight. "Really, brother? That's fantastic. We're saved. What does it feel like to ignite spirituality?" "I can't feel anything." Fang Xiu explained that although Zhao Hao had been in contact with ghosts for a long time, his mindset wasn't up to standard, and he hadn't truly experienced life and death. Therefore, he couldn't feel it. As Zhao Hao contemplated Fang Xiu's words, he began to wonder when exactly Fang Xiu had experienced life and death, considering they had been together all this time. Meanwhile, the ghost began to process Wu Dehai's body. While Fang Xiu's hand rested upon the ghost's thigh, he turned to Zhao and remarked, "Wu Dehai's robust frame will serve us well. He's quite hefty," Fang Xiu continued. "We should be able to maintain this for 5 minutes. Let's limit our touch to 2 minutes, ensuring we have 3 minutes to make our escape." With a thumbs up, Zhao Hao nodded in agreement to Fang Xiu's plan. At this juncture, Fang Xiu closed his eyes, his hand moving in an irregular pattern as he concentrated intently. With each stroke, he focused on the sensation coursing through his palm. In his perception, an increasing amount of cold air gathered within his body. However, upon entering, this chilling presence dissipated without a trace, akin to a stone sinking into the depths of the sea. Intrigued by this phenomenon, Fang Xiu couldn't help but wonder where this peculiar breath was penetrating. Was it delving into the depths of his soul? Driven by curiosity, he allowed his consciousness to immerse itself fully, like a small boat navigating a river, following the path of the cool air to an unknown destination. Slowly, his awareness merged seamlessly with the flow, like a tributary merging into the vast expanse of the sea. In this moment, Fang Xiu perceived a heart within him, beating sluggishly as if shrouded in dust, tainted and unclean. All the while, the cool air permeated into this heart, seeping through its very core. Finally, Fang Xiu experienced the ignition of spirituality, a profound awakening that transformed his being. With this awakening came a remarkable enhancement of his senses and strength, exceeding any expectations he had harbored. At first, he notices subtle changes, a sharpening of his perception, an enhanced clarity in his vision. Colors seem more vivid, sounds more resonant, and scents more fragrant. Every sensation becomes more acute, as if a veil has been lifted from his senses, allowing him to perceive the world with newfound depth and intensity. Physically, he feels a surge of energy coursing through his veins, filling him with a sense of vitality and power. Muscles that once felt tired and weak now feel energized and invigorated, capable of feats he never thought possible. His movements become more fluid and graceful, guided by an inner strength that seems to emanate from his very core. However, despite the initial surge of spiritual enlightenment, Fang Xiu now found himself at a mere 1% of his full potential. It became apparent to him that further contact with ghosts would be necessary to unlock and exert more of his latent spiritual power. The essence of a spiritual master lies in the manifestation of spiritual power. Whatever occupies the deepest recesses of their being, whatever they care about, long for, and yearn for with utmost sincerity, is inevitably unveiled through their spiritual prowess. Indeed, the diversity of abilities amongst spirit masters stems from the unique desires and aspirations harbored within each individual's heart. Just as no two souls are exactly alike, so too are the abilities and powers they wield. Fang Xiu's mind brimmed with curiosity as he pondered the nature of his abilities and the depths of his desires. What unique talents and strengths lay dormant within him, waiting to be unveiled? And, perhaps more profoundly, what stirred within his heart as his most profound longing. Suddenly, as if in response to his inner questioning, a surge of excruciating pain coursed through Fang Xiu's body, gripping him in its merciless grasp. In that agonizing moment, clarity dawned upon him like a bolt of lightning illuminating the darkest of nights. His special ability, undeniably and unequivocally, was pain. Each time he is killed, he resurrects to inflict upon his enemy the pain he has endured, ensuring they suffer in the same manner. Fang Xiu erupted into uncontrollable laughter, catching Zhao Hao off guard with the intensity of his amusement. "Brother, did you succeed?" Zhao Hao asked, surprised. Fang Xiu didn't respond, only continuing to laugh. He continued to exclaim about the amazing ability, thoroughly satisfied with it. In that moment, memories of his wife flooded back, she who had killed him 18 times before. In his mind, he made a solemn promise to make her feel the same pain he had endured at her hands. Suddenly, Zhao Hao interrupted Fang Xiu's excitement, informing him that 2 minutes had already passed. Fang Xiu's expression immediately returned to calm. "Leave for now. I'm going to experiment with the power of spirituality," he instructed. "Did you truly become the spirit master that Wang Xiao mentioned?" Zhao Hao asked, brimming with joy. Without dignifying Zhao Hao's question with a response, Fang Xiu strode purposefully toward the ghost. Standing directly in front of her, he raised his hand, enveloped in a swirling aura of spiritual energy. As he faced the ghost, his mind filled with determination, vowing silently to make her feel the agony of his 21 previous deaths. Fang Xiu's fist soared through the air, closing the distance between him and the ghost's face with remarkable speed. With a fierce determination in his eyes, he unleashed his punch, channeling all his strength and resolve into the strike. As Fang Xiu's punch made contact with the ghost's face, the doctor emitted a piercing cry of agony, her body crumpling to the ground with a heavy thud. Even the scalpel she had brandished slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. However, instead of satisfaction, Fang Xiu's expression soured into a frown. It was clear to him that this punch hadn't yielded the desired outcome. Additionally, a realization dawned upon him: his spiritual powers had depleted significantly after just one punch. Despite Fang Xiu's powerful punch, there was no significant trauma visible on the female doctor's head. "It seems next time, it will truly hurt the ghost," Fang Xiu mused. Realizing the limitations of his bare fists, he acknowledged that it might be more effective to utilize weapons. However, he pondered whether ordinary weapons could channel spirituality. Suddenly, his gaze fell upon the scalpel discarded by the female doctor. A spark of realization ignited within him. Without a moment's hesitation, Zhao Hao picked up the scalpel from the ground. Suddenly, a surge of ominous energy emanated from it, coursing through Fang Xiu's body like an electric shock. It felt as if the energy were piercing his very heart. Fang Xiu pondered the origins of the scalpel, recalling its use on various strange entities within the mental hospital. He surmised that it had absorbed a significant amount of pain from those encounters, perhaps contributing to the transformation of the female doctor into a ghost. With the scalpel now in his possession, a question lingered in his mind: could he use it to end the ghost's existence? Determined to find out, Fang Xiu resolved to put his theory to the test. While Zhao Hao, in his typical perverted manner, was fondling the ghost's thigh, Fang Xiu cursed and demanded that he step aside. With a peculiar expression, Zhao Hao retorted that he was merely following Fang Xiu's lead. Ignoring him, Fang Xiu swiftly moved to strike the ghost's neck from behind. To their astonishment, nothing seemed to affect the ghost. Instead, they heard only the sound of steel clashing against steel. As Zhao Hao examined the doctor's unblemished neck, he discovered that there wasn't even a scratch on her skin. Puzzled, he couldn't help but wonder why the sharp scalpel hadn't inflicted any harm upon her. As Zhao Hao touched the doctor's neck, he couldn't help but get carried away with his inappropriate thoughts. His mouth began to drool at the sight of her smooth skin, lost in his perverse fantasies. Like a sick son of a bitch. With an annoyed expression, Fang Xiu thought to himself, it seems that revenge is not possible for the time being. Realizing it was time to escape from the ghost, Fang Xiu grabbed Zhao Hao by the collar and hastily dragged him away from the haunting presence. At this moment, the ghost doctor stood up, scanning the area, and suddenly realized she had lost her scalpel. Meanwhile, Fang Xiu and Zhao Hao wandered down the hallway. After igniting his spirituality, Fang Xiu's 5 senses sharpened, allowing him to immediately detect someone nearby. He then spotted his 2 colleagues hiding around the corner. Zhao Hao informed him that there were 4 doors in the vicinity. He inquired which one they should choose. As they conversed, the two colleagues approached them, causing Zhao Hao to startle. With teary eyes, the girl expressed her relief at seeing them all right, while the guy pleaded with Fang Xiu to lead the way, expressing that he had been waiting for him for a long time. Irritated by their words, Zhao Hao exclaimed angrily, "You two were the first to run and leave us behind, and now you ask Brother Xiu to show you the way. How audacious are you?" Feeling embarrassed by his words, a strange smile spread across the guy's face, while the girl cast her gaze downward. Ignoring them, Fang Xiu answered Zhao Hao's question by suggesting they should try the doors one by one. His suggestion left everyone stunned. "We're in a race against time. How can we afford to try them one by one?" the male colleague exclaimed. Fang Xiu and Zhao Hao hurried toward the door, with Fang Xiu advising them to cease the unnecessary discussion, emphasizing, "It's your choice whether to follow or not." All of a sudden, a noise from above on the ceiling sent shivers down their spines. "It was the ghost catching up with them," the guy exclaimed. "How is this possible? Did she already devour Wang Xiao and Wu Dehai?" Fang Xiu came to the realization that it was probably his action of snatching away the scalpel that disrupted her murderous pattern. He positioned himself at the door, pushing it open, and urgently shouted, "Let's go!"